Hello everyone, my name is Gabby and welcome back to another Hugtopia Pretty Cure review. This time reviewing episode 6. To celebrate having 3 Pretty Cure, Hana takes the group out on a date to the department store where her father works. As they help out at the store's flower shop, the worker there gets attacked by a new member of Cryos Corp. The Pretty Cure defeat the monster, and Hana starts realizing that she knows Saya from somewhere. So, what did I like about this episode? Well, first of all, this isn't really exclusive to this episode, but this episode was the episode where I kind of sort of realized this because it gave us a bit more information, and that's the fact that I'm honestly really enjoying Cryos Corp as the villains. For a lot of Pretty Cure seasons, and especially the Pretty Cure seasons that don't have a very strong theme, it kind of feels like they pull villain teams out of a hat and just sort of choose what they're going to be themed after at random. But in this season, that doesn't really seem to be the case, in that Cryos Corp is sort of business themed. But the fact that they are business themed actually kind of ties into the whole sort of theme of the main characters and the themes of this Pretty Cure season in general, about, being more mature and being sort of like an adult in sort of careers and future. In that Cryos Corp essentially represents the sort of evil side, the dark side to being an adult. That is, getting demoralized by being stuck in a soul-crushing 9-to-5 job every day and kind of wanting to spread that despair onto others. The members of Cryos Corp are actually adults. They are that thing that Hana and the Pretty Cure in general are trying to achieve, but they're essentially using their powers of maturity for evil. And that's why they're the villains. They're antagonists where the sort of concept and gimmick behind them does sort of tie into the whole theme of the series, and that makes them feel like a much more organic part of the story, and less like the writers decided that this season having a business-themed villain group will be interesting because we haven't had that for a while. I also really enjoyed how the events of this episode, and especially the end of this episode, are sort of hinting that they're going to tie into the events of the next episode. In that this episode ends with the characters recognizing Saya as this former child TV star, and that's presumably going to be related to stuff that we're going to be seeing in the next episode, just judging by the next episode preview. I like this because it makes it feel like this episode did kind of accomplish something towards the overall story of the series. Even if this episode on paper didn't necessarily accomplish that much, it still feels like it has a reason to be there. As for what I didn't like about this episode, well, for an episode that was hyped up at being the Pretty Cure's first attempt at having a job, they certainly didn't really do that much in terms of actually having a job. All we really got to see was them sort of briefly helping out in the flower shop, which was mostly just kind of them moving flowers around and also mopping up the floor. There wasn't really much of an exploration as to how these characters are doing the job, what they think about the job, what they think about the concept of having a job in general is, and basically the kind of stuff that I thought they were going to do with this kind of concept. If I could try and guess a reason as to why it doesn't feel that way, I think it was probably because the whole sort of job aspect of this episode was sort of split into two, in that you had the stuff about working in a department store with Hana's dad, and then you had the other stuff about working in a flower shop with the flower shop owner. It was a bit strange that despite all the relevance put onto Hana's dad, and Hana's dad working at the department store, in the end it didn't really feel like the characters were actually working at the department store, but rather they were working at something else with its own sort of separate story that we really didn't get to see enough of for me to really think that it was interesting. Honestly, I think the issue was sort of putting both of those things in the one episode. I honestly think this episode could have been improved if they just sort of stuck to one idea and kept that consistent the entire way. Either have them talk about the department store and have them work at the department store with Hana's dad, or have their first job just be at the actual flower shop and make the flower shop its own separate entity. The inner cynic in me is thinking that maybe they initially wanted them to have a whole story about them being at the department store, only for them to realize that department store worker isn't a thing that's compatible with the Mirai pad because it's not girly enough, but who actually knows? I've got no idea of the real context, and I don't think I ever will. So, as for next episode, with Saya's past as the veggie girl revealed, it seems like that's going to come into play, as there's going to be an acting audition coming up, and Saya is unsure of her own future. So yeah, we're getting a Saya episode, and this is probably for the best, because out of the 3 main characters so far, Saya has definitely gotten the least amount of character development. It's going to be fun seeing more about Saya. I think she's the kind of character who could potentially act actually be my favorite if the direction they're going with her is the direction that I think they're going. So yeah, I'm really interested to see this. I just can't believe that Saya is basically a Saiyajin. You'd think I would have noticed this sooner. I mean, they're pronounced the same way. I'm sorry, that was a Dragon Ball reference. I'm just making fun of things. So that was Hakuto Pretty Cure episode 6. I mean, it was alright. It was serviceable. At the very least, it was enjoyable. The main characters get a very brief job at the flower shop. They understand what working means and what being an adult means and what the deal with the villains are. And even though there wasn't that much of substance this episode, I feel like at the very least, the strength of the character interactions was enough to keep me engaged until the end. I'm honestly enjoying the group dynamics and the supporting cast, a bit more than I thought I would. So I'm going to enjoy seeing them in action as the series progresses. I'm honestly a little bit behind on spoiler leaks because I haven't found a good place that really sort of publishes it, so I'm relatively left in the dark about a lot of the future development, and that's going to be kind of interesting. It'd be fun if I actually got to watch this series blind. I mean, it's not going to happen. The merchandise leaks are out already who are revealing who the 6th Rangers are going to be, so there's that. But, you know, it's something to hope for. It's something that'd be kind of interesting. I've never done it before and it's never going to happen, but, you know, it's something to think about. So this is Gabby signing out, and I'll see you all next week. Bye, guys!